What can you tell me, Acolyte, of Dreadnought internment? In the eyes of the Loyalists, it is revered. To serve until your body is broken, to rise again in service of the Imperium, the Emperor, and your Primarch. I know that you have heard their wailing, the resonating boom of mechanized fists pounding against ferrocrete and adamantium. I know that on those dreadful nights before battle, the song of the Hellbrutes prohibits you from slumber, and you lay awake, wondering what could cause such calamity. Forgive me my abrupt reference to the most monstrous of our battle brethren. I know you are eager to discover their origins, their nature. But to understand those bestial machines, it is required that we discuss their predecessors. You may raise your quills now, Acolytes, as we begin in earnest today's ritual upon the nature, history, and the might of the Dreadnought class of the Legiones Astartes, from the gilded giants of the Contemptor class to the warp-forged nightmare, Maragal, and the beings of flesh metal wailing in the night deep beneath your cells. Long before the advent of the Great Crusade and the birth of the Imperium, the cradle of humanity, terror itself was engulfed in the flames of war. Ancient as I am, I cannot claim to have personally stepped foot on the throne world as the anathema, the not yet Emperor of mankind, conducted his great unification of terror. But like many things I was not present to witness, through the rites of the Eightfold Path, I have experienced with my own eyes these events. It was during these tumultuous times, as the Emperor fought side by side with his first gene children, the Custodes, that the first Dreadnought was created. A mighty warrior, clad in the golden livery of the Emperor's firstborn warriors, fell to the weaponry of the techno-barbarian hordes on that ancient Terran battlefield. His name was Sagittarius, and he was the first custodian to have ever fallen in battle. It was by the Emperor's own decree that Sagittarius was to be the first of his warriors gifted immortality and interred within a Dreadnought sarcophagi. Onto the very hull of Sagittarius's new mechanical form, the Emperor engraved those words that would ring true for over 10,000 years. Only in death does duty end. And so the tradition was born. Should a warrior fall but resist the abyss of death, they will be judged, and for those deemed worthy, the eternity of iron sleep was granted to them. Such an honor was only granted to those warriors whom their brothers believed were beyond reproach. For to become a dreadnought is to become a living embodiment of your legion's tradition and your history. A warrior granted internment was also expected to act as a mentor, advisor, and guide to his brothers, be they neophytes, sergeants, captains, chapter masters alike. They would come to him seeking his ancient wisdom. For while it is true they are mighty weapons of war, a dreadnought will spend much of their new life in stupor, only awoken when they are truly needed. You may see this as cruelty, when it is in fact a blessing, for even the superior mind of an Astartes can only withstand so much torment within the iron sarcophagi, their cortex reaching out for bundles of neurons long since separated from them, replaced with technological marvels from the Dark Age. The human mind is not built, equipped, nor prepared to handle such a fate. But for those of us who have long since renounced the lies of the Emperor, dreadnought internment is far from the venerated ceremony practiced by our loyalist counterparts. Their entire lives are dedicated to the ideal passed down from their carrion lord. Only in death does duty end. I truly, deeply pity my wayward brothers. Death was never the end. Death, to those of us enlightened by the gods, is merely the beginning. We spend our mortal lives in servitude to them, and in return those worthy are gifted blessings far beyond the comprehension of those ignorant warriors of the Imperium. Should a warrior of the enlightened legions die their final death, our souls will go to the Imperium, the realm of the gods, and it is they who will decide our final fate. I am sure you've heard the rumors of the Astartes Lord who cannot truly die. His name is destined to be whispered in fear for millennia to come. He was once Lucius, but he is now simply eternal. Perhaps we should speak upon the abomination Ignatius Grulgor, an Astartes warrior and servant of the plague god, who fell 10,000 years ago to the hands of Nathaniel Garrow. Not long passed since Garrow turned his back to the slain Grulgor and his cohort, before their corpses began to writhe and twitch, only to rise again, swollen with dark power at the behest and benevolence of their virulent patron. So you see, Acolyte, to be contained within the iron shell of a dreadnought, to be locked away in stasis sleep, to be precluded from the rights and pacts of our brotherhood and those of the gods. For us, it is to lose all purpose. To become a dreadnought, a hellbrute, is to become a tool of war and nothing else. Still, you will no doubt be aware, our legions continue to conduct the act of internment within those damned machines. However, to the legions of the War Master, internment is now the foremost punishment for treachery, cowardice, and failure. It is to be quartered and sealed within the amniotic tanks of the sarcophagi, then forcibly, irreconcilably wired to the machine's mind impulse unit, to awaken deprived of all senses, with limbs of iron and steel. To make matters worse, those subjected to dreadnought internment within the Eye of Chaos well, they will be unable to perform the necessary rituals and wards needed to protect one's soul from the ravages of the warp, their bodies and minds slowly corrupting over the millennia as the demons prey upon them. That, my acolytes, is why you hear the metallic screams of the dreadnought on the eve of battle. They are no longer Astartes. They are no longer men, nor beings of sanity at all. They are a contortion of flesh and metal that knows only hatred and violence. So potent is the psychosis of a hellbrute that despite the sarcophagi caging the pilot having been fully removed, it is required that the iron shell of the hellbrute be locked, restrained, and chained within the lower decks of our war vessels. For should a sliver of the tormented pilot's soul have fractured from the whole and merged within the mechanisms of the machine, it is possible that the maddened, rambling ghost will awaken the hellbrute's systems, rousing them to lash out, slaughtering their attendant captors and breaking free of containment. As with so many weapons of war, to witness the zenith of dreadnought creation, we must journey back to before the events of the Great Rebellion, for the machines we brought to war during the Age of Crusades are both rare and nigh impossible to replicate in these modern times, save for the efforts of the most highly gifted and knowledgeable members of the Warsmith and Tech Priest conclaves. Where a Ferrum Infernus dreadnought will be left languishing at the ravages of the warp, there exists ancient dreadnought patterns capable of such destructive power that to allow descent to the extent of a hellbrute's maddened psychosis would prove unwise. You have no doubt studied the capabilities of the common dreadnought patterns of the modern era. Reinforced ceramite can turn away all but the most potent anti-vehicle weaponry, but the war machines of the times long ago need not rely on such crude means of protection, now considered by the Imperium to be techno-arcana. The systems of a Contemptor pattern dreadnought house atomantic reactor cores that far outpace the power of a Ferrum pattern dreadnought. Well in excess of the Contemptor's power requirements, surplus power is channeled into energy field generators located across the dreadnought's hull. Any weapon turned against the Contemptor must first overpower these energy fields before they can have any hope of penetrating the vehicle's hull and putting a stop to its rampage. Beyond this, the Magi of the new Mechanicum, unrestricted by the dogma of Mars, have found ample room for improvement. The reactor core can be suffused with dark energy from the realm of the gods, creating the Hellfire reactor. Supplanting such a device into the Contemptor allows the dreadnought to power far more esoteric and devastating weapons, such as the soul burners. Barrels hidden within the armored fists of the dreadnought can unleash shockwaves of demonic energy, which, upon reaction with a living being, will tear the soul straight from their prey, feeding the very essence of the being straight into the Hellfire reactor and bolstering the power of the beast even further. Such machines are prized within the warbands and legions, often being reserved purely for the internment of a Chaos Lord. Due to the rituals and modifications of the warpsmiths and magi, unlike their lesser cousins, the occupant of a warp-forged Contemptor dreadnought will suffer far less from the predators of the eye. His mind will remain more so intact and less influenced from the chaotic energies of the eye, and with the often willing help of the smiths and the magi, he may still pledge his service to the gods. Yes, a Contemptor, or perhaps even rarer a pattern of ancient dreadnought, may be pledged to the gods in ways a contemporary machine simply could never achieve. The World Eaters of Angron were swift to pledge their war machines to the Blood God, bringing rise to the Berserker class Contemptor, a monster of brutality and bloodshed beyond the mere capacity of its design and mechanisms. But what if this could be pushed even further? To pledge a dreadnought to the gods and receive their blessings, runes of dark power etching themselves across your hull is one thing. But to those of us undivided in our worship of the powers, we hold far greater aspirations. I have witnessed it myself, through the eyes of a son of Gilliman, at the time of the Shadow Crusade, where the fires raged across the entirety of Ultramar. It was we who bestrode his planets, burned his cities in the name of Monarchia. Through the eyes of one of his sons, I witnessed its glory. The unmistakable form of a Contemptor pattern. I felt his repulsion at its twisted form, the black smoke that bellowed from the smouldering cracks across its armor. He was the first to witness the Maragal, the tainted dreadnought. For where it strode, reality quaked. Armor buckling, flesh dissolving at its mere presence. Bolt shells impacted across its surface, opening cracks that gushed with slick, boiling blood, only for the splits to glow with an unearthly and indescribable iridescence, reforming at will, making the beast whole again. Shimmering behind the shroud of its own smokescreen, the Maragal simply ignored obstacles it couldn't render to ash with its warp-forged, mangled plasma cannon. It need not evade attack, nor navigate terrain, for it was a being of the corporeal realm no longer. When the monstrosity fired its abhorrent weaponry or swept its massive claw, they bypassed any resistance. Armor and shielding meant nothing to the tainted dreadnought. The creature that the legionnaires of Ultramar faced that day at the Battle of Ithaca was the ultimate weapon. Upon the field of Istvan V, the Galvorbak, Astartes fused with impossible power from the entities of the warp, had failed. Penance was due. But not all of them had truly perished. One of them yet clung to life. This unfortunate survivor was no longer a Galvorbak. In the Colchizian tongue he was appointed Mara Gal, that which was blessed, but now stands beyond the sight of the gods. For his crimes of failure to the Eightfold Path, his broken body was dragged from the apocalyptic hellscape of Istvan V, and interred within the chassis of a Contemptor that had also fallen in the same battle. Due to his otherworldly nature, his twin soul, his demon, the interment was as excruciating for him as it was dangerous to my brothers carrying out his sentence. The demon within him fought to tear itself free, unwilling to be caged to the machine systems of the Dreadnought. Nevertheless, the union was achieved. The creators of the Maragal stood back and watched as the nightmarish transformation, mutilating the Contemptor's form, took place, bringing to life a being of Dark Age technology, blessed with the raw power of the Imperium. Despite our efforts, such a being has yet to be replicated. Some have claimed that it was only the hellish nightmare apocalypse of Istvan V that could birth such a being of heretical majesty. Our rites into the dreadnought patterns shall continue another time, Acolyte. For now, the gods have been satiated.